I'm not sure if this is geeky science or crazy alert, maybe a little bit of both. There's a fascinating Novopsych posting over on Daily Kos, a fascinating diary. It's titled Neuro-inflammation from COVID-19 may cause dyexecutive syndrome, formation of authoritarian traits. Now, what they're talking about, there was this guy back in the late 1800s. His name was Phineas Gage, and he was working on the railroad. And somebody was driving a spike, into to nail down a railroad track, and maybe it was him. I don't recall the story, but somehow this spike ended up in his forehead. It went into his forehead and punctured the center of his brain. And the doctor pulled it out, and he survived, which was kind of a miracle of modern medicine in the 1880s. But Phineas Gage went from being like this really nice guy to being basically a jerk. He basically lost control of his own inhibitions. And this was like one of the major things that taught neuroscientists that the frontal lobes, the frontal part of the brain, is where our inhibitory stuff goes on. In other words, choosing not to say something stupid or not to do something stupid or whatever. That happens in the front part of the brain. So this was a fascinating study on 38,000 patients hospitalized with COVID in the United States and Europe, and what they found was 11 they thought had brain abnormalities that were tracked back to COVID. They did CT scans and MRI scans on those 11%, and they found that 10% of them actually had physical damage to their brain from having had COVID that they could identify. So now we're down to 1.2% of people. So keep in mind, we're talking a very small percentage of people. And this was also people who got COVID before the vaccine. So they got the full blam, knock you over. But what's most fascinating about this is that it appears that the damage was done in what's called the ventromedial prefrontal. And this part of the brain, they're quoting this academic paper published back in 2012, looking at people who actually had lesions in that area compared to healthy controls. And what they found was patients with ventromedial prefrontal damage had deficits that, taken as a whole, were reminiscent of traits otherwise observed in a very different population, authoritarians. Robert Altmaier describes authoritarians as people who have the desire to submit to some authority, aggression that is directed against whomever the authority says should be targeted, and a desire to have everybody follow the norms and social conventions that the authority says should be followed. They also note that the overlap between that and religious fundamentalism is very, very high. And so the hypothesis that this guy is putting forward, or this person is putting forward in this post over on Daily Kos, is that the COVID infections that get into that part of the brain may be turning people into authoritarians, aka Republicans. Now, they also say that the best hope to solve this is the practice of meditation and mindfulness, which actually mindfulness exercises have shown clinically to increase brain matter, specifically in the hippocampus, which is where our short-term memories are stored. Daily mindfulness techniques, they say, can effectively grow gray matter, so you can kind of restore your brain. So fascinating story, and some very strange speculation.